Hi, everybody. Today I want to discuss the introductory paragraph, some things that you'll really want to do, some things that you could tend to avoid, and especially how to do a thesis. Then we're going to look at some examples of introductory paragraphs that I think work all right, but there are also things that they could do differently that we might look at. So first, I want you to grab the reader's attention. So we'll often hear of this as the hook. Right? So the hook could be a question to get the reader to start thinking about the issue that you're going to deal with. It could be a story that either you make up or something you've seen in your life. But anything that really leads us into the issue without just jumping into the argument so that the reader is like, wait, oh, we started? So let them know that we're starting. Statistic can also be a good idea too, because those can be interesting and deploy some facts to back us up. Then you're going to move into the background information. So you might introduce all three authors, Prasad et al., Washington and Cook, and Spector. You're definitely going to want to introduce Spector because the autism debate is really the main issue that you're going to focus on with your article. So give us some ideas about what these are about and how they might all connect together. Then, most importantly, you want a thesis. So your thesis is going to answer the question that you're given in your reading set, and then show us how you're going to prove the question using the keywords that are in the body paragraphs for the rest of the essay, actually. So don't feel like you need to write the final thesis right now. Start with a first draft, and then you'll always come back to it and add things as you add pieces to your essay until you're done. So I think a lot of people think you start from the very beginning and then just write until the end and then you're done. But really, I want you to kind of go back and forth between your thesis statement and your body paragraphs so that each part is connects to the other part, right? So then at the top, make sure you're making an argument. You could say denialism is a problem. And yeah, denialism is a problem, but that doesn't mean that that's an argument. That's a statement of fact. Instead, you're going to interpret how denialism is a problem, how the first two authors show the denialism within the third author's readings, right? Generally, use present tense instead of past tense. Instead of saying Prasad et al. Claimed, you'll say Prasad et al. Claim, etc. It's not going to make or break your argument if you use past tense, but it'll show the reader that you are kind of familiar with the way academics write in academic writing, right? Also, don't summarize too much, especially in your narrowing the focus section. Assume that the readers have read the articles. But sometimes I think about it as, what if they haven't read it for a couple months? So you'll hit the main points of each of the articles, especially the ones that you're going to focus on, and then kind of go on from there. All right. Try to be as straightforward as possible. If you say, well, I think that, or, this is what I believe, but it tends to make the reader feel a little less confident with your argument. So just try to say, instead of I think this, just say this, right? Treat it as a fact, because we already know that this is what you think because that's, because you're writing it. Also, you might try to avoid your own experience of the issue, because you're really working on analyzing essays that you have read, as opposed to like kind of showing the things that you already think. Okay. Finally, I think this is a good way of putting what a thesis is. What's the argument I'm trying to convince the reader to accept, and how am I getting you to believe this statement, right? So you might say something about the way people believe autism is a classical example of denialism. But how do they believe denialism? Here's where you'll use keywords that are going to be in especially the topic sentences of the rest of your paragraphs. So we'll work on this as we go, but make sure that your topic sentences are kind of connecting to your thesis statement, and your thesis statement is connecting to the topic sentences back and forth. So again, we'll look at this later as you have more topic sentences. You haven't written everything you're going to write, and that's okay. You will revise as you go. Cool. So I want to look at a couple examples of body paragraphs that I think are doing okay, but could do better. So, for instance, this, here, let's start at the first one. If it moves up, which it will eventually. Right. So, here, this topic sentences says, denial is done in so many different ways. I think this could bring in the reader a little bit more. It seems a little vague, and I'm not sure exactly, what ways they're talking about. It does give a little bit more of the of this problem and why it's problematic, but it eventually gets to the denialism argument as it relates to vaccinations. So I think this is doing a good job of giving a background of what you're going to be talking about, which is to say the vaccines, right? And then finally, let's look at the thesis. So the thesis is the side effects to these vaccinations are minor and happen in very rare cases, but people's false beliefs stand in the way of seeing that. Again, I think it could do more by telling us what those false beliefs are, or how they stand in the way of seeing that. Remember that a thesis can be more than one sentence, but probably not more than two sentences in a short paper like this. Theses can be a whole paragraph if your paper is working, longer. But yeah, I think this thesis can do a lot more in the way of using keywords. Here, the writer used cherry picking and counter arguing in her arguments, so she should have said something about that in the thesis. All right, so for this one, this author says, as humans, why do we choose to deny things? Well, there are many reasons. I think that's a kind of a good start. We wonder and might think about why we deny things, but I would want her to say what those reasons are. Why is it that people deny things in her view? But then she moves into the narrowing focus, right? So she introduces the Washington and Cook article. She introduces the Monica Prasad article, and uses some quotes. Both of them use quotes in the intro paragraph, which isn't necessary, but I think is useful here. And then she brings in Spector, right? So she's getting the really vital information in the very introduction so that we can see kind of what's going on. Then finally, note also that she uses I. It's not wrong, but might, because when she says I might hear his words and see the weather report, but is she really talking about herself, or is she talking about a large group of people? And here, I guess the thesis is, here I'm using willful ignorance because I refuse to believe the truth that I hear. I am denying the facts and developing my own conclusion based on what I believe. Right? So she's showing what denialism is, but still I really think she should use keywords from her body paragraphs to really show what's going on. All right, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. You can send me an email. Even better, you can put your questions in the questions and answers discussion group on the Blackboard so that everybody else can see your questions and answers. And if you really need to talk to me, we can definitely talk 12 to 1 Mondays or Wednesdays are my office hours, or we can talk on the phone if that's a difficulty for you. We can figure out something regardless. So let me know what I can do to help, and otherwise have a good rest of the weekend, and I will put up something on Monday having to do with at least the grading rubric and maybe some ways to add to your essays. All right, have a good one.